Today I want to talk to you guys about my thoughts on the latest Destiny expansion, The Witch Queen. And to kind of understand where I kind of fit in with all of this, I think it's important to understand where I came from in my long Destiny career. I played the absolute hell out of Destiny 1. I easily played over 1,500 hours with my friend Sid. We went through every possible thing you could do in the first Destiny, every exotic, every raid, all the expansion stuff, everything. When the game finally died with the inclusion of the Sparrow Racing League, that's when we ultimately bowed out. When Destiny 2 came along, I, like many other people, I suspect, based on kind of what I know of the game at the time, felt that the game was very flat. Didn't really seem like it offered a lot of new stuff. Felt very similar to kind of the more of the same. So I gave it up. And that's kind of where I left Destiny. I've heard about it casually in the past, and I know it's gained a lot of traction, and the development team has really done a lot to improve the experience, but it was never really for me. A lot of it has to do with the way I think they do their DLC, where it's very compartmentalized. I'll talk a little bit about that a little bit later in this review. But when they announced that they were adding in some new DLC next year, and then they gave the week away for free. So everything, all the expansions, able to play for free for a week. I said, okay, it's time to jump back in. It's not going to cost me anything but time. Let me fire this up, play through the entire campaign, and give my thoughts. And the question is, did it win me back? The answer is yes, and the answer is also no. So we'll talk about that. All right, so the campaign took me about 8 hours to beat. It took me a while initially to kind of just understand what was going on in the world. And I don't mean understanding the story, because a lot of times the story doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me anyway. I did watch some other YouTube videos of people kind of talking about what had happened to date and talking about the seasons leading into some of the bigger notes during the expansion. But from my understanding, going into this latest expansion, knowledge of any of that was not necessary. That's why I thought it was a good starting point. Additionally, the game had changed significantly. While I always have played a Defender Titan since the beginning of time, and that is what I will probably only ever play, that part made sense, at least, understanding your super and stuff. But they had added so many layers to customizing your character and putting together all these very different abilities that really changed how you played the game. If you wanted to absorb things more with, to do more damage or to be more defensive based, to cool down, your melee would cool down or your grenades would cool down. There's all these statistics. I'm not even talking about the gear. I'm just talking about the stats you could select from. That took me a little bit of time to kind of wrap my head around and try to build something that I thought made logical sense. When it came to gear, obviously, I was incredibly undergeared because I hadn't played in forever. Thankfully, I got a starter kit of gear, which helped a ton, which left me to choose my guns. And the infusion of the guns was very nice. That was something that I don't remember in Destiny 2. But basically, you could take any gun you've ever gotten, and if you like it, you could find another gun and basically swap the light level. Well, really cannibalize, not swap. That was awesome. Really, really, really cool. So I was able to take some of my old favorite legendaries and make them new again. The one that I ultimately stuck with is the one you're seeing me play with here. That's the Monte Carlo. For me, that was the gun that won the war. I pretty much exclusively played with that, and then I also played with Fellwinter's Lie shotgun, which I grinded so hard for at the beginning of Destiny 2 PvP, and now that I had it, I was like, I don't care if it's the best shotgun anymore. I don't know if it is or isn't, but it worked well for my playstyle, which was incredibly aggressive, getting in people's face, using my melee as much as possible, using my basically this flying shoulder block as much as possible, and just getting in people's faces, and I loved it. It worked very, very well for me. I actually had a set of legendary armor too, which slowly reloaded my primary ammunition, which was really nice. I don't have to keep reloading. That was more just from a lazy perspective. I don't think it really offered any inherent bonuses or anything. I don't really know, but it didn't matter. As time went on, I did cannibalize some gear to kind of keep that light level up, and I think I finished the campaign at light level 1545, maybe 1544, which was more than enough to get through everything I needed to do. I don't think I was quote unquote raid ready at that point, maybe more like the Nightfall stuff, but it didn't matter because I just wanted to focus on the campaign. All right, so that's kind of where I come from. As I said, it was a lot of changes to wrap my head around, but now let's get into, okay, I kind of understood the general idea of how to play. Probably still hadn't totally min-maxed my character yet, so to speak, but I had enough weapons and understanding of how to play to get in the action and to have some fun. So let's talk specifically about the DLC now, to kind of give you a little bit of background on where I come from. The story was actually really, really good, and it's actually the best Destiny story that I can honestly think of in all of my time playing Destiny, through the original Destiny, through the main campaign of Destiny 2, and the little bit I stuck around before I realized the game wasn't really for me. What I think made the story so good was that, for the most part, it actually had some resolution to it. There was a major villain that was introduced, and throughout the campaign, their intentions were made very clear. Why were they doing what they were doing? You and your allies working together to uncover the mystery made logical sense. The revelations that you came to were very well explained, and the resolution was like, okay, I can get on board with that. The only question I have, and maybe it's done intentionally, maybe it's to lead into more DLC, and if you watched any of the new Destiny news that came out over the last week or two with the new expansion, maybe this feeds into that narrative, but the biggest question I ask after the whole game is why? Why did things happen the way they did? And I'm specifically talking vague for anybody who has yet to play the game, because I'll be kind of advertising this as like, should you play Destiny again? So that's the only question I have. And I know as an engineer, I love to dissect and overanalyze things and to get lost in the weeds at something. And I will tell you that for me, that is the biggest question. But everything else made sense. All the supporting characters I thought were very well fleshed out. They all had decent motivations and tensions. Your Guardian actually speaks very briefly, which I don't remember that ever happening before, which was cool. You get everybody together. There's some really major heroic moments, and it was fun. So I enjoyed the story, and I didn't feel like I had to have the, 18 seasons of knowledge and all of the DLC unlocked or have played through to understand anything. It was all very clear to me what was happening in the moment. So good job on the Destiny writers for making an engaging story that kept my interest. In terms of like just overall graphics and performance and presentation, I wanted to play this on PC. I actually downloaded it initially from the Epic Games Store. They were giving away the Bungie 30th Anniversary Weapons Pack, which included a lot of like weapons from the Halo generation. Obviously not Halo stuff because they don't own the rights to that anymore, but just a nod back and to just kind of like old things from Halo. And I was like, oh, that sounds cool. So I downloaded that, and I initially started playing on Epic Games Store, and my game kept crashing. And I was getting this error called broccoli, which, a lot of these game developers have in very goofy words. So you can quickly Google that and find out what's going on. Quickly found out it was a graphics driver problem that many, many people are currently suffering from as the time of this recording, the end of August. Tried rolling back drivers, turning this off, lowering graphics, playing windowed mode, did not matter. I was getting hard game crashes every 5 or so minutes. So that's why I jumped over to PlayStation 5, which is where this footage is actually captured from. And on both, it looks great. Obviously, my preference would be on PC. Could use my Elite controller. It's got ultra widescreen support. Ran at a locked 115 frames a second. Without everything on complete max on my 2080. Looked beautiful. Loved it. Unfortunately, kept crashing. PC, so to me, PC definitely the preferred platform. On PlayStation, still looked good. Obviously, now it had HDR, and a lot of computer monitors don't have HDR. Mine does not. So I had that really nice HDR presentation, which popped. Draw distance definitely reduced a little bit. There was a lot of loading time issues. Not issues that like where the game broke, but excessive loading time sometimes for things to happen. Going into a room, sometimes you would actually almost see the world level load in around you. What never really slowed me down from enjoying the game or the experience, though. Played wonderfully on my DualSense 5, had some great controls, and it felt good. I know it's not really ported to PlayStation 5. It's just the like PlayStation 4 variant with a 60 frame per second mode, which you absolutely need in a shooter, by the way. So that was nice. So wherever you play, I think you're going to have a good time with it. Obviously, the preference would always be PC. And I'm sure it looks great on Xbox Series X as well. It's probably identical to the PlayStation 5 performance, if I had to guess. Sound was also amazing. As you guys know, I'm a big fan. I did a lot of graphics. I did a lot of sound videos on my sound setup where I'm using a Shit-Hell 2 and a high-end pair of Sennheisers. And mind-blowing sound. So amazing. Every gun sounded so unique and different. You could almost feel the way the gun was shooting just by the various pitches and changes and rumbles that came out of my headphones. I was genuinely blown away by the insane amount of sound design. The enemies, the way they exploded, grenades going off in the distance, walking in water versus walking in sand, flying around in your spaceship as you go to another location, or even zipping around in your Sparrow as you navigated around some of the big open play areas. All sounded incredible. And the music itself was some of the best I've heard. I've never felt more like a badass in my life than the last couple missions, where the music really takes a very, very heroic flair. The best way I could describe it is, and I know you've probably watched a Marvel movie in your life, you know that fanfare that starts up with a Marvel movie and you see all the characters and Captain America's throwing his shield and it gets you all wound up for what you're about to experience. The music does that throughout the entire experience. I felt like I belonged where I was at. The music gave me a sense of purpose and drive. It was dark and brooding and moody when it needed to be, especially in some of the underground areas. It was more bright and vibrant in the cities. And then as the final boss battles progressed on and you went through all the different levels and really understood what was going on, amazing. Really, really well done. I cannot say enough good things of how insanely amazing that music was. So major shout out to whoever worked on that. I think that's a soundtrack I will definitely be buying. No doubt about it. So what was missing then? You know, like so looking at the whole package, like I said at the beginning, I love it. Would I keep playing? Yes and no. Did it win me back? Yes and no. Well, I think the biggest problem for somebody like me coming late into the game is there's so much I miss that probably doesn't matter anymore, honestly, in terms of the story. But you're constantly reminded of what you don't have in this game. If you want to go do some of the goofy game show stuff with Xur and try to get new pieces of gear that way, it's constantly reminding you that you may not have the 30th anniversary pack. And if you want to do an old level or check out a dungeon, it's going to tell you that you need to buy this piece of DLC or that piece of DLC. It's very compartmentalized, and it's hard to just jump in and just enjoy the game. I understand some of the design philosophy behind it, not all of it entirely, but it felt incredibly compartmentalized to me. I'm not even talking about the microtransaction stuff with the flares of, like, you know, different color armor or different effects that you could do, like, you know, when you're doing your emotes, like you could sit down or you could clap or whatever. There's some really cool ones that cost money. Totally fine with that. Special effects, that sort of thing. Understand that's all bonus. I'm talking just about kind of like the core game. Like, okay, here's the game world. Go find a planet to go and get into trouble. If you are just joining the game now, you're playing the free-to-play variant and you go out and buy the latest expansion, Witch Queen, you're going to be missing out on a lot of stuff. Still going to be missing on a lot of stuff. And because the game does a lot of roulette in terms of like what the mission of the week is or what's going on, there's a chance that you might not be able to do it, which is really stupid to me. The biggest frustration, though, I think, was that there are extra strikes that were not included in the base version of the game that had to be bought extra. So some of the best content, in my opinion, at least through Destiny 1, was the strikes, and then ultimately the raids were the best. But the strikes were a lot of fun. It was you, and that's what you're seeing now is the single strike in the campaign. There's only one. The other two are gated behind a paywall, which I found very interesting. And I just think that just kind of showed the philosophy in this game was, yes, we're going to tell a compelling story, but once you've finished it, if you want to continue the fun and you want to do more stuff, you're going to have to pay up. And I think that might rub a lot of people the wrong way. It definitely rubbed me the wrong way because, you know, here you are in a situation where you are now invested. I do understand how to play now. I've gotten some better pieces of gear. I beat the story. You know, obviously it sets up to an interesting raid, which I'm sure would be fun to eventually get into, and seeing all the cool events going on and how they've kind of built these quest logs for you to go off and always find something to do, something to unlock, some trouble to get into. You're always going to be hitting a paywall. And I just don't know if I feel like I've done enough to really warrant, you know, going out and paying money for just 2 strikes, which will be fun the first time I play them. But after that, will they be fun? Probably not. Now, the campaign, definitely something I could see myself playing through again. I know there's like a regular mode, which is what I played it on. And then there's a legendary mode, which really ramps up the difficulty. I wasn't strong enough to play through the legendary mode. The campaign was phenomenal. And the last level in particular felt like the old Destiny 1 raids. Lots of new mechanics that have been introduced in this game. Shooting switches and jumping on timed platforms and the traditional carrying the orb from one side to the other. Seems like they just can't get rid of that mechanic. They love it so much. Picking up special weapons that break down particular barriers. Lots of really cool things mixed in with arguably the best gunplay with the best guns, honestly, out of any first-person shooter, I think, right now in the market. Lots of fun there, but the strike was really just kind of like get from A to Z, kill everything, and you know, move on. I don't know what the other 2 strikes are like. If they play more like raids, maybe they'd be fun to play again, but I suspect that just like everything, it'd get old. So that's kind of where I leave this game. Like, do I want to play more? Do I not want to play more? Do I want to invest probably realistically $50 to $60 to buy everything so I can be quote-unquote caught up? So I can go back and chip away at things. That way I'm never gated by anything. Anything I want to do with anybody, unless it's like the latest and greatest raid content, which, you know, obviously it's going to take me some time to level up for. Is that the philosophy here? And you get this kind of like FOMO almost of like, well, I want to jump in the game and I want to play. However, I'm going to have to spend quite a bit to get back to where I was. Yes, the DLC is on sale. That's a lot of content I'm talking about. Basically, I'd be buying like 4 or 5 pieces of DLC to get to that price so that I was basically completely caught up. Thankfully, the PvP is free to play, which is where I really enjoyed spending my time quite a bit. And I didn't even talk about PvP here, but because I'm really just focusing on the campaign, which I loved. I would say if you're interested in a really fun 8-hour solid story experience, definitely worth it alone just to check out the base game and play the campaign. If you're looking for something beyond that, that's when you got to start asking yourself how great your investment is and how much do you want to keep spending. So I'm going to leave my video review there. I think this is a good place to stop. Obviously, the raid is done, or the strike is done, I should say. I want to hear from you guys in the comments below. Let me know your thoughts on kind of where this expansion fit in the greater scheme of Destiny, and is it something that you see yourself visiting again? Because I think I might pick it up and play it again at some point. I really did have a lot of fun. Thank you all so much for watching. Take care of yourselves. And until next time, I will see you guys on the other side.